Hey everyone, welcome to the first ever journal entry episode. These are going to be short, informal monologues during the off weeks that there's no guest for the interviews. They're going to cover current events, news, pretty much everything and anything that's going on in the world that pertains to adventure. Although this particular episode is a video, I can't promise that all of them are going to be video just because of the amount of time it takes for me to produce and to edit and every other thing. I'm a one-man operation. So in all likelihood, these are probably going to be audio only, but I want to formally introduce what these episodes are. So I've done some reevaluating, some recalibrating of the podcast over the last couple weeks. And my promise to you from this point forward is I'm going to make a much more concerted effort to be consistent. Every Monday morning that you go to work, there will be an Adventures Less Traveled podcast episode. Whether it's the traditional interviews that we've been doing all the way since April 15th, or whether it's these new journal entry episodes, there will be something waiting for you every single week. So I realized I kicked this entire podcast off back in April without any context, without any background about how this came to be or why I'm interested in adventures or even who I am. So allow me to introduce myself. Back in 2019, I set out on a cycling trip across North America from New York City to Seward, Alaska. It was 6,000 miles over the course of 95 days. While I'm proud of the mileage that I put into that trip, as you guys are all well aware, there's other cyclists out there who have eclipsed that 6,000 mile number. But what I believe sets my trip apart is the absolute thrashing that I received from Mother Nature. I endured every conceivable storm that you can imagine. Thunderstorms, hailstorms, sandstorms, blizzards, tornadoes, you name it. I probably experienced it at some point on the trip. Not only that, I had a broken collarbone almost the entire way, and I was literally knocking on death's door from hypothermia due to the incessant rain that seemed to follow me the entire trip. Once I returned, my friends and family kept urging me, write a book, do something with that trip. And, I did give it a shot. Who knows, maybe I'll even finish that at some point in the future. But I soon realized that there's so many cool stories out there, not even pertaining to cycling. As the 12 guests on the show already have demonstrated, there's a lot of different facets to adventure. And I was really drawn to that. And I thought there's so many inspiring people out there that I want to talk to whose conversations could inspire other people and get more people to go on adventures and go through the same self-imposed hardship that I went through, that all these other people went through, that made all of us better people. And that was really the genesis of this podcast. And yes, if you're wondering, I will have an episode on this trip that I'm talking about, but it probably won't be until the anniversary of that trip, which is coming up. So subscribe and stay tuned. Now, I have no idea where this podcast is going to go. Maybe it's going to be a complete flop and no one, it's never going to take off. I don't know. Luckily for me, I do have a day job. So I'm doing this as a labor of love. I'm not doing this to try to make a living off of it. If that happens to be down the road by the stroke of luck, then so be it. But that's not my goal at this point. I just want to have genuine conversations with people, and I want to share those conversations with you all because I think too many people get lost in this mental trap of I have to either live my life according to some orthodoxy, or I want to do something but I'm too scared, or I don't, I'm not motivated enough, or whatever the case is. I want to inspire you all to go out on an adventure. Whatever that adventure is. Define your own adventure. Define your own epic, as Sean Tracy would like to say. Do something. That's what this podcast is all about. And I'm doing this because I want to do it. If even just one person tells me that one of these episodes inspired them and was the catalyst for some adventure that they went on, then this whole endeavor is worth it to me. I'm going to give it 110% until there's no more gas left in the tank. So you might be wondering why the name journal entry? Where did this come from and what's the significance of it? Well, on that trip I was just mentioning a minute ago, my mom gave me a journal to write in. And I'm a very quantitative person. So at first, I'll be totally honest, I kind of dismissed the whole idea. I thought, okay, I'll write some basic description of what the day was like, but I never really gave it much thought. So I have it right here. This is the journal. This is the journal that my mom gave me. And let me outline how the first couple days of this journal went. Day 1, I drew a picture. I drew a picture of me going up a hill with a thunderstorm in my face, and I have 9-mile-an-hour wind, 5-mile-an-hour average speed, 19% grade, largest incline, torrential downpour, 7 hours, New York City to Morristown, 50 miles. Day 1. Not too interesting, right? Mostly data and statistics, which were probably already recorded on my Fitbit or on some of my cycling gear in the first place. But yeah, nothing about what was happening, about the emotions I felt, the huge swings every day, the highs and the lows, the mental torment that you had to deal with. Nothing about, the fact that you're going through some of the most beautiful moments of your life and some of the most tormenting days of your life at the same time, and how the combination of both of those is the beautiful thing that makes this adventure worthwhile and is the reason that you grow, nor anything about all the countless hours you just spent by yourself thinking of things. All of these thoughts that I had in my head for hours at a time. None of that was in the first couple pages of this journal. Luckily, I flipped a switch. At some point, about a week into it, after, like the 9th person offered me a bottle of water and a place to stay and a shower, I was like, I should be documenting these memories. These are pretty cool. And from that moment on, the rest of the trip from day, 10 to day 95, I poured everything I had from that day into that journal. Now, a year after that trip, I could tell you exactly what happened on any given day from sunrise to sunset. I could tell you the entire chronology of events. I could tell you what I ate. I could tell you what I saw. I could tell you the people I met. I could probably even tell you the thoughts in my head because they're still that fresh. But as the years have gone by, those memories have started to fade. While I still remember the stories, obviously, I remember in general what happened. That day-to-day minutia, those dates, those chronology of events, all of those details, they started to blend together. But whenever I go back to this journal and I open up to day 49, I'm transported back to that day, experiencing those same emotions, all the little details, all the little things that I was thinking about, all the laughs I had. And I can relive these stories in incredible detail because of these journal entries. So that's what these journal entry segments try to do. They're snapshots. They're snapshots about the stories and the adventures from the world around us at a given point in time. But maybe they're also opportunities to talk about the podcast from behind the scenes, kind of like this episode. Or maybe they're Q&A sessions with guests or with viewers, if that's something of interest. Maybe they're just updates about the future. They could be really anything. The possibilities are endless. And these segments can really go any direction. These journal entry segments are meant to be an open book. The same way how this journal was an open book that captured all of the little details of every point in time on that bike trip. With all that being said, I thought it would be a fun idea to do a where are they now, what are they up to kind of segment and recap all the guests that have been on the show so far. But before I do, I need your help. Feedback. This podcast will never get off the ground unless I know where I can improve. I'll never know if what I'm doing, if the guests I'm bringing on, if the content I'm providing to you, if the reels that I'm releasing on social media, if that's relevant, if you like it. I'll never know unless you tell me. So please, 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 please give me feedback. I have a feedback form in the description below that you can use. It's a Google form. It's super simple. Hopefully it doesn't take you too long. I think it's, probably 2-minute, 3-minute survey about some of the episodes that have been released so far. So it's just a way to let me know what I can improve, what I should continue, or what I should remove altogether from this podcast. Even if you hate the podcast, I would still love to know why you hate the podcast. And I'll never know unless you give me feedback. So that is far and away the most valuable thing that you can offer me is to give me feedback on this podcast so far. Now, the next best way to support this podcast, aside from the feedback form that you probably hear thousands of other content creators tell you all the time, like and subscribe, is to subscribe. It really does help. And whether you're listening to this episode on YouTube, on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Castbox, any of these other platforms, wherever you're listening to this right now, please make sure to subscribe. It's a way to let that platform know that you want more of this content, which then gives me the information that you like the content. It will allow me to give you an all-around better experience. Another thing, you might have noticed that some of the episodes so far seem kind of dated. They might have had references to 2022, something like that. This is all by design. I try to adjust my publishing schedule according to what is most relevant at that given point in time. Most of the guest stories and the interviews are timeless. You can listen to it today. You could have listened to it a year ago. You could listen to it 10 years from now. The stories and the message that they convey, timeless. For most of them. Take the recent episode with Rich DeRose, for example. That episode was recorded almost exactly this time 1 year ago in 2022. But his stories of being in the military and his combat experience and everything that went along with it and training for marathons and coming back and the mental health struggles and his experience during 9/11, all of that, that's timeless. That didn't have to be released specifically in September of 2022. It's just as relevant today as it was a year ago. But by contrast, take Katrina Moore's episode, for example. That was super relevant to the Canadian wildfires that were going on at the time. All right, so that being said, let's dig into it. Where are they now and what are they up to? So let's just go right down the hatch. Paula Reed, the first inaugural guest on the Adventures Less Traveled podcast, just recently cycled across Ukraine with Neil Lofton to raise money and awareness for the Siobhan's Trust. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, but it's a charity that provides food, notably pizzas, to those whose lives have been ravaged by the war, just innocent people who've, just had unfortunate circumstances. And it seems like a pretty awesome cause. She just finished this as of like a week ago. So my hat's off to you, Paula. That was pretty fun to watch and follow along. The second guest on the show, Eric Breimer, he's continuing to conduct research experiments and collaborate with other academic researchers in this adventure psychology field to try to grow the field. One particular study caught my eye. It was called the Adventure Sports and Psychological Health and Well-Being Study. It says it's currently seeking volunteers. I don't know if that was old information when I saw it, but feel free to look up Eric on LinkedIn or check out some of the studies in the adventure psychology area at his respective university. My buddy Adam Westfall, chapter number 3. He's taken a bit of a break from downhill skateboarding. He's recovering actually from an avulsion fracture in his elbow, but this hasn't stopped him from pushing his own limits. He's completed the 40-mile Grand Traverse ski mountaineering race from Crested Butte to Aspen in Colorado, which is pretty remarkable. 40 miles on skis is almost 2 marathons if you think about it. So that's a lot. That's huge. Caroline Subaru and David Ferguson have officially etched their name in history for the fastest circumnavigation by married couple on 2 bikes. Absolutely huge. Much deserved. Well done, guys. Allison Criscitello. She's been laying low. She keeps grinding out research and helping those around her push their own limits on these various mountaineering trips, but she's mostly in research mode. That was chapter 5. Chapter 6, Tyler Kempney. He and his wife Lois recently moved to New York, and as of last week, He helped orchestrate the Beast of the East dry tooling competition and the tryouts for the USA ice climbing team. From what I could gather on his social media, it seemed like there was a lot of promising young talent. All these little kids were zipping all up and down all these walls. I don't know if they were actually for the USA team or not. They seemed a little young, but it seemed like a really awesome experience and an awesome event. So I'm sure Tyler did a great job, and glad to see him sharing his love of ice climbing with the world. So, Chapter 7, Katrina Moore. As I was just alluding to earlier, she's been fighting the good fight all summer, darting all around the country on various wildland firefighting assignments. She's currently in Oregon for some wildfires out there. Chapter 8, Damian Brown. This guy he continues to blow my mind. In that episode that we recorded, I only got through like 75% of this guy's accomplishments. We kind of ran out of time. Like I didn't want to just keep pushing it, but it was already over an hour. And there were a bunch of things that he did prior to that interview that we didn't discuss. And now he's currently leading a team up Mount Kilimanjaro, which is a feat that he did over a decade ago. And he's documenting the whole thing on the 4th season of his Deep Roots podcast. So you guys definitely should check that out. And on top of that, he's starting what he calls the Iron Mind Institute, which is kind of like his lifelong passion project as a way to get people through these, what he calls crucibles, which are these like grueling, dig deep within you, try to find what you're really made of challenges. And all very exciting. Chapter 9 was with Sean Tracy, one of my good buddies from that cycling trip. And he's been tapped for quite a different assignment this time around. He's actually his daughter's cross-country coach for the first time. And those girls are have quite a challenge ahead of them if they plan on running 135 miles. But aside from that, Sean also has a couple projects on the horizon that I think he's keeping a little bit close to the breast till he figures out all the details. One has to do with doing something in Alaska during the winter, and another has to do with like a long distance sailing excursion. For the sake of privacy, Tony Staka and Laura Moeller, I'm going to keep them off the list, but trust me, they haven't lost sight of their unfinished business, and you can follow their Instagram to keep up with their updates. Rich DeRose. He has recently been elected city councilman of Absecon County in South New Jersey. Big congrats, Rich. You are the only person I would ever stick my neck out for politically. You're a great man. I'm sure you're crushing it out there. You're doing great things for your community. So nothing but respect. And Andrew Mortensen, the most recent episode, well, you're going to have to just subscribe to figure out what he's been up to, because there may or may not be another episode on the horizon. That brings us to today. Here we are. First journal entry in the books. I always welcome feedback. I'm always looking for new guests. I'm always looking for new topics to discuss. So if you have any of that, let me know, and we'll just keep this podcast rolling. So since you made it this far, I'll even throw you a bone. The next guest is either going to be a shark diver from Hawaii or a cave diver from Florida. So just have to wait and see. All right, guys. Thanks so much. Hope you enjoyed it. Take care.